I'm delighted to and have the pleasure of introducing our next guest, who is a partner of ours. And she has worked very closely with our teams to support our clinicians. Ms. Shannon McPeak is a registered nurse and entrepreneur. She graduated from Purdue University in 2016 with her Bachelor of Science in Nursing. She started her career in Washington, D.C. in the neonatal ICU, but then sought out a career in travel nursing. Shannon experienced serious anxiety associated with the nursing profession, which inspired her to create Operation Happy Nurse. In addition to founding Operation Happy Nurse, Shannon has been recognized as a 2022 L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth honoree and a 2023 Purdue University Health and Human Sciences Early Career Achievement Award recipient. She's thankful to all the amazing people who've helped her create this stress relief haven, as well as those who've supported her along the way. And thank you so much, Sharon. Shannon, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi everyone, it's really exciting to be here. I'm going to quickly share my screen as I go through my little chat about specifically mental health and healthcare, and another thing that I'm extremely passionate about, which is the impact of social media on your mental well-being. I'll share a little bit further detail about my own personal journey and what led me to Operation Happy Nurse. And if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to write them down and email them to me later. I'd love to chat with anyone who wants to chat about this further. If you can't see my screen, just have someone holler at me. I don't know if you can do that on this webinar, but sometimes
We can
whenever I
see
do this,
you.
okay, perfect.
Yes.
So to guide you through my story a little bit, like Robin said, I graduated from Purdue University in 2016 with my bachelor's of science in nursing, and I started my career in a level 4 neonatal ICU in Washington, D.C. I chose that NICU because it was a nurse residency program and because it not only was a level 4 NICU, but they had the opportunity for you to learn transport, which I really wanted to do. That was something that was really high on my list. I always wanted to be a transport nurse for those NICU babies. But one thing that I didn't feel that I was adequately prepared for throughout school, and then in addition, the nurse residency program, was the severe pressure that you're under as a nurse. And we learned so much through all of our courses about how to care for literally everyone else around you, but not necessarily how to care for yourself. In our death and dying webinars or our death and dying, 1 day presentations, it was always about, well, how do you care for the patient during this process and the patient's family, but never how do you care for yourself afterwards. So throughout the beginning of my career, when I had never really dealt with much death prior to this, I was all of a sudden expected to just know how to cope with the loss of infants. And that was extremely difficult for me. I started developing some pretty significant anxiety. After I went to my first funeral, I learned the habit that many nurses have of burying things down. It's really difficult when you're on shift and something really traumatic happens, but you have to continue on. We're all taught to just bury it. And then it seems like too much energy and too much work to bring it back up again after your shift happens. So I just became anxious, numb, depressed. I had this fear of, letting my patients down. The reason I got into the profession was to help them, and I had this consistent fear that I was going to miss something that would cause a poor patient outcome. So I started double checking things, triple checking things. My anxiety started turning into obsessive compulsive disorder. And when I was at home, I started double checking, triple checking my stove, my oven, the locks on my door, my phone, alarms, all these things that helped me in the time gather a sense of control in an environment that I felt has a lot of lack of control. You can do everything you possibly can to benefit a patient and things can still go poorly. And that was really difficult. I started developing this numbness inside of me, this severe burnout at about 6 months into my career. And I was really struggling. And this entire time, I felt extremely alone in that because everyone around me seemed fine. Everyone around me was still at work, pushing through, laughing through. But then when I look back on it, so was I. No one around me would have known that I was struggling like I was because nurses were all very strong and stoic people, especially on the outside perspective to other people. So it actually took having someone extremely close to me notice that I wasn't expressing myself with the kindness and compassion that I used to. And they chose to end up leaving my life because of that. And through that process, though, I started researching a ton of different stress relievers. I really got on top of my mental well-being. And in doing so, I felt comfortable speaking to other nurses. And I learned that this entire time that I felt like a bad nurse, I felt weak, that I wasn't right for the profession. I learned that many other nurses were going through very similar things to me, and that not only was I not alone, but it was actually a crisis in the healthcare profession, specifically the nursing profession. This led me to do a survey in 2018 where I found that 80% of our respondents, ranging from age and specialty, suffered from anxiety, depression, or a combination of both due to the nursing profession. And after learning this, I decided I needed to do something about it. So after 2 years of prepping Operation Happy Nurse and after 2 years of having fun travel nursing, in December of 2020, we launched officially our free online stress relief community and the 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization Operation Happy Nurse. Throughout that period of time when I was really struggling, there were subtle signs and symptoms that I was. So I wanted to guide everybody through those subtle signs and symptoms of anxiety, depression, and burnout so that hopefully we can all acknowledge that we might be going through something before we reach the point of crisis like I was at. So for some subtle signs and symptoms of anxiety, we have persistent fatigue, irritability, increased impatience, being extremely self-critical, mood swings. Do you focus on potential problems instead of enjoying the moment? Are you consistently worried? For example, prior to entering the nursing profession, if it was a really sunny day outside and I was just sitting on some grass with some friends, I could just feel this elation, this excitement to just be living, right? I felt the grass on my feet, the grass in my hands. I felt the love of the people around me, the sun beating on my face, and I was just severely happy to be in that moment. But after entering the nursing profession in the first couple of years, or I guess the first year, when I was sitting in that grass in the exact same situation I was in before, I wasn't feeling that happiness. I was worried about the patients at work. I was stressed about the next time I was going to go into work. I was thinking about every potential problem that could occur, not only at bedside, but in my life. I was just feeling that constant worry that was different from where I was at prior to entering the profession. That feeling that your body is bracing for impact. So, if you're in a car and you slam on your brakes and your body tenses up just in case you hit something, if you feel that in your body kind of at baseline, for example, if you were to do a body scan right now, do you notice that your jaw is clenched? Are your shoulders and neck feeling tension in your lower back? Does your body feel like it's bracing for that impact that might not be coming? Doing tasks just in case. You already checked that TPN, you know that the TPN is okay, but just in case you somehow missed something, you check it again. Are you doing tasks just in case? Are you having some sleep difficulties? Subtle signs and symptoms of depression, loss of interest in activities that previously brought you joy, feeling that there is nothing you can do to improve your life, changes in your habits. For example, before maybe drinking a glass of wine was a way for you to relax, but now you need 1, 2, 3 glasses of wine to even fall asleep at night. Are your habits changing? Difficulty making decisions, difficulty focusing, those mood swings. My fuse got a lot shorter when I was going through that really difficult period of time and still does if I'm feeling that high anxiety. So things that normally won't upset me, anger me at a lot quicker rate than they would have prior. the consistent urge to be alone? Uh, are you an introvert, but is there a period of time that you need to be alone extending? Or are you an extrovert and now in order to get your energy, you have to be alone? Is that changing from what your normal constant was? Unexplained headaches or stomach aches? Signs and symptoms of burnout. Burnout can look a lot like depression. And in the next slide, I'll give you an idea of the difference between the two. But physical symptoms of burnout include high blood pressure, GI issues, sleep issues, frequent headaches, getting sick more often. Mental and emotional symptoms of burnout may include concentration issues, feeling depressed and worthless, suicidal ideation, loss of interest or pleasure in things, irritability, apathy, cynicism, isolation. So, how do you then know what the difference between burnout and depression is? If removing the source of your stress eventually makes you feel better, chances are you're experiencing burnout rather than depression. So, for example, if you're in this role and you're feeling those signs and symptoms of depression, but then you take a hiatus from that role, either maybe you go to another one for a couple of years or even just a month break from it all, and that those symptoms go away or decrease significantly, odds are you're experiencing that burnout rather than depression. So, how do you manage your burnout and depression? Use your PTO. Even if it's for a mental health day, because the day prior, maybe you lost a patient that you were really close with, or something really difficult happened at work, or even, this past week has been really difficult for healthcare workers. And for me, it's been an extremely triggering experience. Throughout this past week and hearing all of the news and that sort of thing, using your PTO to give yourself that space to heal is so important. Set boundaries at work. It's really easy for organizations to sometimes bully people into picking up overtime, saying that their colleagues need them, that their patients need them. But in all reality, you signed on to work your allotted shifts. It is their job as an organization to staff the unit properly by either bringing on travel nurses, bringing on more travel nurses, or hiring individuals. It is not your job as a travel nurse or as a staff nurse to staff the unit. You are working your allotted time. It is okay to say no to work overtime if your mental health cannot handle it, if you need that space from your work in order to properly cope with the things that we experience as healthcare providers. That being said, if your really good friends are on shift or you loved your patient or you just want some extra cash, obviously you can feel happy picking up that overtime, but set the boundaries to make it your decision, not theirs. Find your community. That can either be with nurses around you, other healthcare workers, or even outside communities if you need that space from it when you leave work. For example, like book clubs, or I know there's different chess clubs now or running clubs, anything that brings you joy, to find a community of like-minded people who can help you through difficult periods of time. Try meditation. I'm not someone who can just, sit in silence and pretend I'm meditating. My mind is everywhere. But Operation Happy Nurse has guided meditations in our community that are extremely helpful for me because they guide me through it and allow me to find that peace without my brain scattering all over the place. Move your body. This doesn't have to be going to the gym for 45 minutes after a 13-hour shift. This can be stretching. This can be walking around your block. This can be walking your dog. Whatever movement feels good to you and feels good to your body. And know when to seek professional support. Again, if you're noticing those signs and symptoms that I discussed earlier, try to find a therapist or group therapy or a support group that can help you work through some of the difficulties that you're experiencing. One thing I like to note is your first therapist, odds are, is not going to be the right therapist for you. So just because it doesn't work with one therapist doesn't mean that therapy isn't a path that you could take. We like to say interview your therapist. So know what you need in therapy from either previous experiences or through, we have an example that says how to interview, or we have a blog that says how to interview your therapist, looking things up like that so that again, you can kind of get on top of that therapy before you get 3 months in and realize that that therapist isn't a right fit for you. Now let's dive into social media. For me, like I said earlier, it's obviously been a really tough week for tough months, tough years for healthcare in regards to workplace violence. And as someone who has lost a friend to workplace violence, being on social media has been very triggering for me. In addition to that, social media in general can have a lot of challenges that we don't always acknowledge, as well as benefits. So I'm going to kind of guide you through social media and its effects on mental well-being. So, benefits of social media may include connects us with people worldwide, fostering community, fostering that support. It can provide access to new perspectives, educational content, career opportunities, can be a tool for self-expression, severe tool for advocacy and creativity. Challenges of it include it can negatively impact your mental health, especially for those who may already be struggling. The curated nature of the posts can distort reality, leading to unrealistic expectations. For example, when I still had my personal page, I realized that the only things I were posting were the good things that were happening to me, right? The L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth thing, getting those awards, having these awesome events, but I wasn't talking about any of the back end of it of, I took a severe pay cut to be able to do this. So the financial struggles of starting your own business, the anxiety that comes up and down with, hearing others' stories, walking through, a lot of individuals' personal traumas. There's a lot of things that are difficult in my life that I don't talk about on social media. Without awareness and boundaries, it can contribute to anxiety, stress, self-doubt. So the comparison trap, social media highlights curated, unrealistic versions of life. It can lead to unhealthy comparisons of success, appearances, lifestyle. It can increase your anxiety, depression, feelings of inadequacy, and may lower motivation and self-worth. But a big thing to note is that social media was actually built to be addicting. So as you're scrolling and you're like, I'm just going to be on Instagram for 1 more minute, 5 more minutes, or I just want to look at one more post, it is meant for you to continue scrolling because it releases that dopamine, creating a cycle of instant gratification. So over time, the reliance on this dopamine hit can lead to excessive screen time. It can impact your focus, your sleep, your overall well-being. Self-image and isolation. This is all over actually social media, talking about how social media affects self-image, which is a little ironic, but filters and unrealistic beauty standards can distort your own self-perception. It can create this pressure to present yourself as perfect or a perfect version of yourself, again, through those filters, through body positioning, through only showing the good things in your life. Online connections don't always replace in-person relationships, so it can also lead to that increased loneliness. So how do we be mindful about our social media use? As you utilize it, I encourage you to ask yourself some questions. Am I doom scrolling or am I engaging in social media positively? Is it impacting my sleep, mood, or self-image? Is it the first thing I look at when I wake up and the last thing I look at before I go to bed? How do I feel after I use the app? Is my heart rate increased? Is my anxiety increased? Practical steps to build that healthier relationship with social media, start by setting those limits on the apps on your phone. You can take your phone and say, I only want to be on social media for 1 hour. I only want to be on for 2 hours. I have mine limited to 2 hours, and then it'll shut you out at that 2 hours. And take regular breaks throughout it. Curate your feed to follow accounts that uplift and inspire you. Find ones that build you up, educate you, and make you feel better. Engage in real world activities and prioritize face-to-face connections. If you're out to dinner and your friend goes to the bathroom, try hard not to grab your phone. Try hard to look around, acknowledge 5 things around you, 5 things you hear, ground yourself in the moment versus immediately reaching for your phone. Be mindful of what content you consume and how it affects your mental health state. Again, ask yourself those questions. Figure out what is negatively impacting you. So utilizing social media as a supporting role versus utilizing it as your main go-to mental health help, because a lot of accounts will, give you all of these tips and tricks, etc., which can be great, but we should know when we need to seek that professional help versus utilizing it as its only role of helping us out, if that makes sense. So utilize social media to find community and support, access mental health tips and inspiration, follow licensed mental health professionals, take breaks to avoid that overload, and again, recognize when you need professional help. Social media will not be that for you. So again, utilize that as a supporting role versus professional help. All of the social media content that I had on this website was based, or on this presentation was based off 2 blog posts from our website, which was written by 2 of our mental health professionals. You can scan these QR codes if you want to learn more about the negative impact of social media on our mental health, as well as social media and mental health, why it's no substitute for therapy. And we can send that out later too if you weren't able to scan that in time. So at Operation Happy Nurse, our mission is to help all nurses and student nurses and CNAs struggling with stress, anxiety, and/or depression by offering a community with free resources focused on proactively improving overall mental health and physical well-being. We offer things like discussion boards, book club. We have dietitians on board who will answer any of your questions. They also write a blog post on there. We have chefs on board who release weekly recipes. We have discounts. We've got yoga, fitness, meditation videos. We have a ton of different resources that you can pick and choose from, and they're all completely free to utilize. Our goal is to develop these positive coping mechanisms so that we can better understand our own mental health and better cope with the things that we experience within the profession. So if you want to sign up for the free community, you can scan the QR code there. On May 1st, we'll actually be launching our mobile application, and we'll be redoing the desktop version of our apps. So once you, or of our community, so once you sign up, it'll automatically switch you over to the new platform on May 1st, but it'll have all of our same resources. If you want to connect with us, you can email me at shannon@operationhappynurse.org or contact us on Instagram and Facebook at Operation Happy Nurse. And again, if you're unable to scan the QR codes for the social media, you can also just go to operationhappynurse.org and go to our TheraSpace section, and those blog posts will be in the TheraSpace section. So I know that we're done and everyone's gonna have to go to the bathroom before the next webinar. So I'm going to hold off on the questions for now. But if you do have any questions that you want to ask me or you want to contact me about anything, please don't hesitate to email me or to reach out via Instagram. I would love to speak to anyone and everyone who wants to hear more about either my story, Operation Happy Nurse, or social media.
Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story. I've heard your story before, but it's so impactful. I hope you continue that conversation. We really appreciate you sharing with our audience today.
Thanks for having me.